this industry called community tourism and how big it was. Essentially, massive INGOs all over the world have been dumping hundreds of millions of dollars into community tourism as a development model. But being who they are as NGOs, nobody's ever heard of this term. Nobody really knows how to access it. There's a huge lack of awareness, education, and trust in the tourism industry for this product. And long story short, we, after making the film, set out to try and solve that problem. And really what we learned is that these communities lacked modern marketing techniques. They didn't really fit, the existing platforms of Airbnb, Booking.com, and so they were getting lost, and they were impossible to find. So that's essentially what Lokal in a nutshell does. We are an online marketplace, and we support local communities around the world. We're in, I think, 22 or 23 countries now. We work with roughly 100 local communities around the world, helping them share their story and become bookable online. So I'm gonna move closer here. And how much time do we have?
We have half an hour about, and then we're going to do a Q&A as well.
Closer.
Is it on? You guys can hear me? Cool, yeah, we have about half an hour to jump into a lot of, I think starting with content is a really great way to lead into everything that we wanted to discuss and thinking about the power of tourism and what your booking decisions really have when you are doing an experience when you're abroad. Watching that film, really, it brings you back to the Osa Peninsula. I've been to about 30 countries in the world, and that little corner of the earth is definitely a special little spot. How many people have been to Costa Rica who are here? Okay, has anyone been to the Osa Peninsula? Okay, so that's, I think what's really inspiring about having a film like that and the power of storytelling is the fact that it can transport the viewer there. So even though you guys haven't been, you have a little bit more context for what it's like there and what those local experiences are. Can you guys talk a little bit about what it's like to be a filmmaker down there and why that's so important to what you're building with Lokal?
Yeah, thanks Kelley. Thanks everyone for being here. So essentially Lokal was born out of a media project that we spent years producing about the Osa Peninsula. And our time there was extremely special for multiple reasons. But I think I'll dive into kind of the unique aspect of filmmaking, creating content, and building the relationships that are necessary to be able to translate, a very sincere, trustworthy, honest, and transparent tourism experience, which is what essentially we want to create, or what will be created with Lokal, right? We want travelers to be able to really understand where they're going, what they're supporting, who they're connecting with. And the best way to do that, outside of going there on your own or having a personal friend or confidant tell you how amazing it is through video storytelling. And so our unique ability to, and fortune to spend years on the ground in Costa Rica allowed us to build and connect with so many of these local communities and really build that trust that is necessary to be able to communicate a sincere experience to the traveler. And I feel like that is a very unique position that we're in, is having built those relationships, being on the ground, having the support of the local communities who are oftentimes very skeptical of Western entities coming in because they've been bowled over so many times. And so we felt a little bit of that resistance at first. We also, have, both of Marco and myself have a background, Latin background. We speak Spanish fluently, and that gave us a unique advantage to be able to really go into the communities and tell them what we're doing. And one of the things that I think at first, when we first started filming this type of tourism, was, you know, we'd go to these experiences or we'd go to these destinations and we'd go in guns blazing, meaning we'd be rolling like right away, like shooting. And we very quickly realized that how off-putting that was. In our mind, we're like, okay, we have 2 hours or 3 hours to film everything, so we got to go in and like capture as much as possible. But the barrier that creates between like the human connection between us as filmmakers and the characters and the subjects was palpable. So really understanding that, that as filmmakers, you need to build that relationship, you need to build that trust, and then work with your characters and your subjects in a very like honest, organic way. In my opinion, reads the best type of content to be able to translate who we are, what we stand for, and what we sell. So, I don't know.
Maybe I'll just add to that both of us have a marketing background that's been super helpful. I think that one of the key elements or key challenges we had as a company when we set out to do what we are now in full swing of was we're taking a very new product to market that nobody knows about, and there's a lot of misconceptions, right? Like, quite frankly, the sustainable travel world has done an awful job branding. I mean, using the word, as Kelley usually mentions, responsible travel doesn't instill fun. A lot of it people think is hard, uncomfortable, like difficult to get to, not a vacation, right? And fighting against some of those misconceptions initially was challenging, and that's why this type of storytelling is so important. For me, I always have to remember to make the distinction between journalism and documentary. And we stay away from journalism as much as possible because it's not human and it's not emotion driven. Documentary to me, I mean, it can be many things, but it's often character driven. It's often your job as a filmmaker is to get someone or the audience to fall in love with a character and see the issue or the situation through their eyes. When taking this product to market and trying to support these communities, that became invaluable. And I think it was a big part of us deciding to put our documentary, producing and directing hats aside and step into building a social enterprise that we never considered doing at the beginning.
I think what I do want to pivot toward, what you're touching upon there as well, is thinking about marketing and how not only are you trying to build something where you're connecting with a traveler before they're actually reaching the destinations, and I feel an emotional connection to that, but also in the way that we've developed the marketing. And I'm wearing 2 hats today. Many of you guys know me from Impact Travel Alliance. I do also run marketing and social media for Lokal. So thinking kind of from a position of seeing the industry as a whole for ITA and what I'm building, as well as what we're trying to do with Lokal and marketing from the inside out and push that message out for a responsible vacation in a way that is engaging. And so looking at how we are pushing that marketing out, we're doing a lot of different A/B testing. Earlier we were talking about the community feedback. If anyone is in our Facebook group for ITA, you know that I'm always sending out forms and I'm saying, what do you guys want to hear about? What do you want to do? How can we build something that's better for you? For Lokal, how does that translate into what you're building for the communities, as well as the way that we're helping those hard to find community experiences reach those travelers?
Maybe I'll start paying it off. So a quote that's been really relevant for our whole team recently is the idea that if you want to build a Ben & Jerry's ice cream empire, you might have to start out scooping some ice cream, like getting to know your product, getting to know your customers. I think probably I'll let you talk about, running trips on the ground. Us, we do this. Eytan and I actually guide some trips, and it's been invaluable to learn. what Kelley was talking about, collecting data, for me, being a marketer, one of the most exciting things is learning how to use simple tools like Typeform. We've started building a pretty big audience through our email list, and we kind of got this idea that we needed to know, what was the price point that our travelers were really looking for in terms of how do we spend our little bit of money to onboard more product? How do we figure out what's going to sell if we're going to invest in getting it on the platform? And we did this, 10-question survey that was, it was well integrated into a campaign we did. It was like, hey, win a trip to Peru, and we got 50,000 people to enter. And right after it said, hey, we hope you win, but if not, here's a 10% coupon code, and if you want, we'll give you some cool tips on where to go for your Peru trip. Just fill out this form. And we got 8% of 50,000 people to fill out 10 questions for us. And the data in there pivoted the company, like literally in 2 weeks. I mean, one thing that blew my mind, we had always assumed that our main travelers were going to be millennials. And we realized that actually if we combined our kind of early 40s to 70-year-old travelers, it was identical in size to the millennials, and they spent 6 to 10K per trip versus millennials spending 2 to 3K. And millennials tend to book a la carte, really, investigating everything, and whereas a lot of these older travelers really want something a little more comfortable, a little more hand-holding. I mean, for us as a business, just thinking about a business, that was obviously a stronger demographic for us to go after. That's something we need to do, is become financially sustainable. I mean, as much as we want to do good in the world, if we can't grow as a company, we're just never going to do that. So,
Sure. Just to kind of add to that, right? I think when Lokal was initially founded about 2 years ago, we definitely were at that point 100% focused on building and selling community tourism, or building that platform to be able to sell it. I think what we realized was that the reason that there's no other platform out there that is solely focused on community tourism is because the numbers don't really work. And meaning you need to have an insane amount of sales to be able to make that a viable revenue model. So instead of, I think there's probably been other companies out there that have gone down that path and decided to abandon community tourism, and that's a big reason why there aren't a lot of booking platforms out there that represent these marginalized communities. But at the end of the day, our mission is to support these communities, is to find a way to drive more travelers there. So we have to kind of get creative and think, how can we still do that while creating a viable revenue model? And the answer to us was to incorporate and build a second vertical, which is kind of higher end sustainable lodging options. The margin, this is a product that travelers understand, they connect with, it's safe. We don't need to create a ton of educational content around nice eco lodges. That's just something that people already want. And if we can build that second vertical, which is completely in line with our mission and our values, and a lot of these eco lodges also are connected to local communities, in the same region. So we could, connect them to like a day trip a half hour away or something. That model could then lend itself to really be, siphoning off part of that revenue to support the community tourism destinations. And so that's kind of the direction that we've gone on that end. Do want to mention briefly, we do a lot of digital marketing. We are a tech platform, but a lot of the, like what Marco, his first sentence about scooping the ice cream, he alluded to it. That's kind of us leading trips once or twice a year and connecting with some of Lokal's biggest ambassadors, people who want to come down and experience Costa Rica or experience Guatemala with the founders of Lokal, as a way to really build that connection, to really understand the pain points of the traveler, what gets the travelers excited, to share that with them, It's a really beautiful experience to share a new travel experience for everyone that's going on this, and see how they react, what really impacts them, and then creating dialogue and friendships through that process has been that's our analogy of scooping the ice cream, and so we lead trips a couple times a year, and they're small trips, and we do a lot of promotion around them. But really, at the end of the day, it's about the actual experience of being on the ground with travelers. And I think that, from a marketing perspective, if we were to look at it through that lens, it's a very, it's a much slower process, but so much deeper. And I think going down both paths is a very exciting thing, and something that we are testing as a business.
So in the world of influencers, and where people look at a social media page and they say, oh, you have 17,000 followers or 200,000 followers, and people are making judgments based off of the amount of people who are within a list or following something, what have we done? Can you guys touch upon how we're translating those numbers into actual engagement? And specifically for the audience members who are listening, what are tactics that they could apply to their own businesses to get creative with having the actual ROI on why you should invest in social media, or we're giving a trip away every month. Why is that valuable, and why are we making those sorts of investments with what we're doing?
I guess I'll start that off and then hand it off. But I think one of the biggest realizations that we had in working with influencers, ambassadors, bloggers, journalists is that is to really dig under the surface and not just take their numbers at face value. For us, we found that working with bloggers who have 10,000, 15,000 engaged fans can be much more valuable than working with an Instagram influencer who has 500,000 followers on Instagram.
Even just looking at the audience, because I know the first press trip, which is what a lot of what we've seen in that video, looking at the range of people who were on that trip. Holland, who's an actress, and she's got several million followers, as opposed to Ina, who's a photographer, and at that time I think she had only 7,000 or 8,000 followers. But looking at that audience is so important as well.
Yeah, absolutely. You can dig into feedback that they have on their posts, comments, percent of likes, not just number of likes. And also with bloggers, right? With journalists, we found that, people who have an audience that trusts them, and, you gotta do a little digging to figure out who they really trust. But if, a single mom, like an example, Nicole, who went on the Costa Rica trip a few years ago, she has a blog, Third Eye Mom, 20,000 followers, and on the surface, I'm not sure what I was expecting, but she ended up writing incredible content, amazing imagery, 20,000 fans, and it translated directly to bookings, to really remote lodges and places, and we were like, what, people want to go there? And it was like, yeah, it's like, where's this interest coming from? And it's like, oh, it's coming from Nicole. So just really taking a more human approach to influencer marketing as opposed to just focusing 100% on numbers, and I think can go along with it.
I think we found that to be actually so powerful. That's literally become one of our biggest revenue pipelines, is working with influencers. And honestly, I'm more interested in even smaller influencers. I think a lot of people have heard the term micro-influencer. People who have like 2 to 5,000, maybe even but under 10,000 followers are really interesting to me because they're often the ones